just worse dancing, Blair, right? And the music stuff.
I'll dance again. I can't help myself. It's just so catchy. Welcome, welcome. Oh, I never get hearts for my dancing. You've endeared yourself to me. Thank you. I tell my husband I got hearts for dancing.
Lots of hearts.
Oh, so many hearts. I think that's a please stop dancing. If we flood it with emojis, we won't have to look at our dance. Welcome, welcome, guys. We'll just give people a minute or two to join us. Can't help it. I literally can't help it.
No, I hope to God. My children are always embarrassed when I start to sing along or dance.
Tell them to get on board. Wonderful.
Well, that is a cue for us to stop dancing.
That's
Welcome,
exactly
welcome.
right.
Welcome, everybody, to our 15th and last McKinsey Unpacked of 2025. We've arrived at the end of the year. For those of you who join us for the first time, I'm Marie.
And I am Blair. And together we have the wonderful joy of co-leading our global talent attraction function. And this is a series that is really near and dear to our heart. We sort of always say we can't believe they're letting us do 15 of these, but so far no one's given us the hook. But we spend so much time meeting candidates, talking with candidates, and it's always sort of frustrated us that people don't have a great sense of the real McKinsey. There's often sort of a brand image about us that we think doesn't always match the reality of what it's like to be here and be a part of this community. So we were like, you know what, we're going to try and change that. So we launched this series to introduce
one episode at a time, right?
One episode at a time. We are clawing our way to busting those myths. And
it's also a nice excuse for us to invite amazing guests. So that's
exactly. We've got an amazing one today, who after our dancing might be rethinking his yes to join us on this, but we'll see. We will rebound, we promise. But again, we wanted to call it McKinsey Unpacked as a bit of a play on consultants traveling. And so we wanted to unpack for you what's in the suitcase, what's really behind the curtain of McKinsey, and introduce you to some of our amazing colleagues and talk about various topics that we hope will be interesting to you. The topic today, I know, is one of the things that Marie and I both credit as the reason we have spent 20 plus years at the firm, and that is learning. Forever, ongoing, unparalleled learning is something that we're really excited to dive into today with our special guest.
Yes. And as I said at the beginning, it's number 15. If you are not thinking, what, 15? This is my first one, and I missed 14 others of these amazing episodes. Don't you worry. You can watch all the old episodes on the McKinsey Unpacked website. So if you just Google McKinsey Unpacked, you get directed to that. And given it's the end of the year, we also wanted to send out a big shout out and thank you to all of you who have listened to us before, who are returning time and time and again. And
you are a brave soul. If you are returning, wow, there's a special place in heaven for you. So well done.
And who are helping us make it better through the comments and the feedback that you are sending us. We always read it, and we're really grateful for the time you spent to give us feedback and advice how we can make these episodes the most useful they can be for you. If you are joining us for the first time, we always talk about 3 different topics in our Unpacked journey. The first one is just giving you a bit of a roadmap where we are heading today, and Blair gave already a sneak peek of that. And then the main section, the deep dive section, is our Unpacked, where we have a great topic and guest speaker today. And given we both have children, you never go on a trip without snacks. You don't ever leave the house without it. So we end on snacks for the road, so little tips, insights, and advice for you. But so before we introduce our guest, Blair, where are we heading today? You already said it earlier, but let's say it again. What are we talking about today?
Well, there's a personal spin. There's a reason this is so well timed to talk about learning today. Marie and I are actually both headed to Kitzbühel, Austria next week for a partner training, which is wonderful. So Kitzbühel is, it's a pretty magical place. Our firm has a long-term lease on a facility there called the Grand Hotel. And it's a pretty wonderful place where we gather to do trainings, we'll do candidate events. Actually, every summer we do a McKinsey Music Festival where my wonderful colleagues who have talents beyond their day
Yeah.
jobs, which is very annoying to me because I don't, show up and together make music and celebrate their musical talents, which is great. So next week, Marie and I will be carving out time that we don't really have as we're sprinting to year end, but that's one of the things about McKinsey that's really special is we are making the time to focus and invest on us for 3 days with partners from all around the world to think about who and how we want to show up as leaders at the firm,
Yeah.
which we're
Can't
really
wait to
excited.
see you. Yes, it's super
Well, it
fun.
is the place. I will admit it's the anniversary of Marie introducing me to the Aperol Spritz, which is my favorite drink of all time. And now, of course, she hates it because everything I see, I buy her little, like stationery with an Aperol Spritz on it, a little T-shirt,
Think
all
you
the
need to
things. And
move
Marie's
on to
like,
something
I know.
else. Exactly.
Yes, but
No,
but
but it's
learning
a
is top of
truly,
mind, and we're excited.
I know it's a truly magical place. And I mean, definitely both of us, we've been at the firm for a million years. And one of the reasons for sure that I've stayed here for so many years is the incredible people around us that from whom I still learn to this date, but also the opportunity to continue, the opportunity and expectation, frankly, to
That's right.
continuously learn and develop and grow. And that never ever stops, no matter what
Correct.
role you have, no matter where you are in the world. There's always the question, what are you going to develop next, and how can we
Yep.
help you on that journey, which is truly remarkable. And it's also really nice to see that that is being recognized externally. I don't know if
Yeah.
you guys have seen that Time Magazine has recognized McKinsey for the third time in a row as the best company for shaping future leader. And a big part of that is really through the development and the learning and the apprenticeship that you experience if you work at McKinsey.
Yep. Yep. And Marie, what I think is cool about that is whether you come here for a couple years or like us, 20 years, you will walk out the door a better leader than when you arrived. And that
Yes,
is part of the magic of our culture of learning. So I think we've officially talked too much, Marie. What do you think?
yes, yes. Let's bring in our guest star.
Let's bring in our guest star. So we are really lucky
Yay, there he is.
today. Drum roll, there we go, to be joined by Scott Rutherford, who is a senior partner from my home office, Washington, D.C. In addition to his day job serving clients, helping both public and private sector clients tackle all sorts of strategic and organizational operational challenges, Scott also leads our global learning, which is amazing. So, on behalf of all of our global colleagues, Scott helps think about what our learning strategies are, which is amazing. He also has a really inspiring journey, both at the firm and coming to the firm, starting out in the US Army and now here as part of our leadership factory. So, we are so excited to have him join us today.
Yes.
Thank you, bro.
Welcome, Scott. Welcome,
Uh,
welcome. Well, indeed, you have a really exciting journey, Scott, that Blair already touched on a little bit. But what brought you here and what kept you here for so many years? Maybe we start there.
yeah, I think it's a good backdrop as well. So hello everybody. Thank you for joining us, especially this time of year. I think everyone is sprinting towards the end of the year, and this is a big commitment. I it's I think it's important for my story to know a little bit more of the background. I grew up in the Army. My dad was career, so I've moved around quite a bit. Went to undergrad at the University of Kansas, then I went in the military. And then when I got out, I did biotech. And then when I was headed to business school, that's when people were saying to me, "Oh, you'll probably end up at a place like McKinsey." I had no
Mhm.
idea who McKinsey was. Never heard of them. Never knew anything about them. But to be fair, I also was confused between Goldman Sachs and Saks Fifth Avenue. I didn't know the difference between. I
It's
did
easy
not.
to mix up. It's easy to
I
mix
did
up.
not have a business background. I was in my own cocoon in the military, but at business school it opened my eyes. It opened my eyes to all the possibilities, all the industries, all the things I could do. And again, it was one of these. Well, why wouldn't you do consulting? And for me, with my military background, I was like, I was built to be an operator. That's what I thought
Mm.
I should be, and it's what I was trained to be. And then in business school, the one I went to was all about being a future CEO. And so I was like, okay, that's what I'm built for. That's what I should do. That's what I'm being trained to do. So I did a bit of a pivot. I did code at McKinsey, which my wife said to me, this was not on the radar screen. What are we doing? But at the time, I was like, you know what? I'll do 2 years. I'll
Yeah.
learn. I'll
That's the
learn it.
classic.
I'll learn.
How'd that work out for you, Scott?
Yeah.
Exactly. We'll get to that. Um, I'll learn a ton. I'll get incredible experiences. It'll look good on my resume. It'll have all the things that I think I need for building blocks to go do what I've been meant to do. So I joined the firm and I was the absolute generalist my first couple of years. I was in a textile plant in Georgia. I was in a boardroom for a high-tech company on their 5-year strategy. I did due diligences. I was all over the United States. And again, my acumen was just, super steep on the business side. And our model of learning, as much as I lead, formal learning and training, is really the apprenticeship model we have in the firm.
Yes.
And with that apprenticeship model, I got to work with not only incredible people, but incredible clients. And it just, from an exponential standpoint of just changing the way I think, the way I problem solve, the way I approach things, it really was an incredible couple of years. And then for a lot of different reasons, I was like, oh, I'll do one more year here. Oh, I'll do another year. We have, my wife and I have 4 kids. My wife's got her PhD from Johns Hopkins, and at the time was working in the Harvard School of Public Health Injury Prevention Center. So balancing both her postdoc, balancing time at McKinsey was always like, oh, we'll just do one more year. We'll move here, we'll move there. We'll do some things. And then finally I was up for, as an AP, which is right before partner. And I was able to pay off, all of our loans, and we were in good shape. And I'm like, okay, now it's time to leave. And so, because I was always supposed to leave. So I walked into Tom Barkin's office. He was the head of the office at the time. And I was going to tell him that I was going to leave the firm. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad you got time on my calendar. We're putting you up for partner early. And I'm like, oh. And then he said, so what do you want to talk about? And I said, no, just wanted to say hi. And so I did another.
That's a quick pivot.
And then it was like, okay, I'll stay for another couple of years as a partner. But I think the important part is when you fast forward to now 25 plus years, I have, from a learning standpoint, 2.5 years of being a generalist. I was elected a partner as a telecom sales and marketing person. Then we moved to DC for family reasons, to get close to family. And I pivoted to what we just started at the time, the public sector. And I was doing a lot of org work. But then based on the org work, I started doing insurance work. So I got elected senior partner with a program of public sector, defense and security, and insurance. And
it's not at all how you started, right?
No.
And then if you fast forward to now, I've been a senior partner longer than a non-senior partner. And if I think about the last 10 years, I have served a banking insurance client for over a decade. I've served a public sector entity for over now 20 years. And I have served in this last 10 years for at least 3 or 4 years, a major video game company, a payments company, a healthcare company. So when you think about, me and learning and bringing the best of the firm and being around people, I'm jumping around from sector to sector to sector. And to be effective in what we do, as far as counseling CEOs, leading problems, it truly is bringing the best of the firm. And so for me right now, in my role in learning, it is that step back to say, looking at my own trajectory and my continuous learning even now, it's, how do we help people with whether they want to be like Alex Dichter? I don't know if Blair remember Alex, but Alex and I joined at the same time. Alex only did airlines work. He was a former TWA pilot. All he did was airlines. I was the Whitman sampler of McKinsey, which is a box of you never know what you get. I did everything else. I was a true generalist. We both, got to the same level and had great careers and were good friends, but we had very different, trajectories when it came to the type of work we did. He did all airlines work all over the world. And I did.
And that's the beauty of it, Scott, right? Exactly. Like if you look at 2 people, you cannot find 2 people who have a similar path, right? I mean, like you said, some people are very specialized from the day one, others jump around, which is a bit more your path, which I always really love, that there's not one molded way that everybody walks on, but you like circumstances and interests change, or I don't know why you jumped around. Maybe you follow topics or people, but people just shape their different journeys, which I think
more people and clients. But now you put my hat on as far as head of learning globally, and you're like, okay, we have onboarding of folks that all have different starting points with different careers, with different things, from the knuckle draggers like me that came from the Army to the former BAs that come back to the firm and everything. And taking that group and thinking about a learning journey all the way to senior partner and even to the month before they leave. And you have the Alex Dichters of the world, and then you have the Scott Rutherfords of the world, and everything in between. And we have not only our consultants, but we have our non-consultants as well. And how do we think about those learning journeys, those pivots in time on your trajectory as you move up, as expectations rise on what we can expect of you the longer you're in the firm? Are we supporting you with all of the learning, all of the training that you need to be able to not only thrive, but to accelerate? And so that backdrop, I just want to lay it out there because the complexity of what we do in learning is changing constantly based off of the context of our clients, also adult learning techniques, but also just the fact we have such different paths and there's very different ways to be successful in the firm. So how do you get to like the irreducible core of what we do, and how do you? So let me pause.
I love that, Scott. And I think, and we're going to dive into a bit around, our learning strategy, but I love this idea that we're this giant mixing bowl of really unique, different human beings. But this idea of the irreducible core, how do you take that magical mix of really different human beings and instill in them, a culture and a mindset of learning, but then the principles, of course, that allow you to build your toolkit regardless of where you aim it, regardless of the topics that you work on, the clients you work with, the teams you work with, that irreducible core. Before we jump into the learning stuff, which I know is the good stuff, I love knowing more about your background. So you mentioned a little bit about that, but it sounds like to me there was a bit of an irreducible core that being in the military translated to you, even though it was fundamentally different joining private sector business. You mentioned sort of, I was trained as an operator. Could you just tell everybody a little bit more about sort of what you learned in the military and what you brought that you thought either was part of the irreducible core that remains part of you being a successful leader today? And frankly, what else did you have to sort of build on and change?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in the veterans community. And I talk to new veterans a lot to kind of, give them confidence on what they bring to the table. It's, I'd say a couple things. One is perspective. When you're in a team room and it's, after hours, after dinner, and you're crunching through stuff and there's stress in there and you're like, we got to, deliver something for our client. And you see people that are more stressed than I think they should be, or more a little bit freaked out than they should be. I find our military folks, I'm not in the woods in a swamp leaning against a tree with an M16 in the rain, wondering what we're doing, whether we're deployed or training. So this perspective of just, is this a big deal? No one's going to die. We're going to be fine. The calmness that I think you bring from a military background into, I think, a pretty stressful situation. Our clients give us the problems they can't solve, and they want them solved. So the intensity of the work we do is quite high because what we're doing is trying to give our clients the best answer we possibly can without, 100% of the facts in a short period of time that is pragmatic and actionable and will get them to the outcomes they want. So with that as a backdrop, the pace in which we work in a highly matrix team, you have a core team, but you're dealing with the best of the firm and you're bringing experts in, you're tapping into all the stuff. I find that the military background brings a perspective of calmness. When you're deployed, you don't have weekends. I mean, you're working 24/7. You have a world in which you're operating. And I think bringing that to McKinsey separates you because you can actually bring, I think, a level of perspective to the room that I have found at times gets people to have levity, gets people to kind of relax, gets people to kind of take things in stride. So that's one. The second thing is resilience. In the military, and this is something I'm working a lot with on our training, is building resilience. You have to go through adversity. And building resilience means that you have to kind of get through the muck. I mean, you can't, there's no silver bullet. If I saw the problem.
No, because it's about bouncing back, right? You have to
you have to trip to bounce back. Yes. That's right.
So in the military, we create training for failure. We make you fail. And it is realistic training. It's live fires. It's all of that stuff. But we want you to realize, and as best we can of a scenario to prepare you for what your mission is, that there are going to be failure modes. And they have all of these things that get built into it that just make you better and better and better.
Yeah.
At McKinsey, a lot of people that have joined us have never failed before.
Yeah.
They've got straight A's, they've got to the schools that they wanted to, they've been crushing it all the time. And then they come in to McKinsey and then all of a sudden they run into a buzzsaw because again, we get problems that an individual on a team cannot solve. You get a work stream, the idea that we think you can solve that work stream, no. You have a whole aperture of the firm to help you solve that work stream. But as you think about it, you will make mistakes. And some will be pretty big, and some you will feel like, oh my gosh, am I going to get fired? I've thought that a couple of times.
We
But
should do that as a session, by the way. We should invite brave friends who are willing to talk about what we all thought we were going to get fired.
Okay, taking notes.
Where to begin?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, for sure, right? But again, now all of a sudden you have somebody at McKinsey who's never really failed before, and now they have a failure moment. And what do they do? Do they have the resilience, the perspective, the ability to kind of move through this? And I think in the military, because you're kind of trained for, and we always laugh about it, the whole plan and the operations order and everything goes out the window as soon as you cross the line of departure, because everything you prepared for and everything you plan is not going to happen. But you've been prepared for so many different scenarios and so many different things that when things go bad, you adjust, crumble, you just adjust and you go through it and you make it through. And so I think one of the things the military folks bring to the table is that resilience. It's the ability to like, oh, I messed that up. Okay, well, what do I do about it? I'll own it. I will, fix it. I will raise my hand. And I feel like those two traits that I see more common across the military and veterans community at McKinsey bring real value to our teams. Because it impacts all of them as well, and we help each other get through it. And to be honest, the humility you have to have as a veteran, because other people are bringing stuff to the table that you don't have. And a lot of that is more business acumen. A lot of that is the ability to do crazy things with an Excel model or AI that no one else, you've never even touched before. So you're constantly learning from them. They're constantly learning from you. And I
love that.
And that's frankly also what McKinsey is about. And I think this is one of the myths that people often don't see, that it's all about the team at McKinsey. Yes. It's not at all an individualistic
you are never alone.
firm or culture where it's only about the individual and what they can do. Exactly, Scott, every single day, I to this day still learn from people around me where I'm like, oh, this is something that I hadn't thought about. And jointly, you just get better in the team. But let's pivot maybe a little bit to the main topic of today, which is around learning. And you have many different roles, Scott. I don't know how you do that, but maybe your military resilience helps with that as well. Having all these different hats on. But we touched on it already a little bit when you talked about, we have a unified onboarding where we take people who come from all different types of backgrounds and we kind of create a common understanding and a common starting point. But can you share a bit more about your role leading learning at the firm and how we are thinking about learning from day one? What is our strategy around this?
Yeah. So I'll actually give you kind of my view, not what's written. So Maria, don't think I've seen that before. I'm going to simplify it a bit. When you think about where we're making big changes and what we're trying to do from a learning standpoint, there's two dimensions. There's the skill-based version of it. And the skill-based version of it is, I'll use three dimensions. The IQ piece of it, which is how do you problem solve? How do you use AI? Like all of these things around IQ that we're building from the day you get there off of what you already know, all the way even to senior partner level. The second one is kind of EQ and RQ. So emotional quotient, relationship building. And it starts off with just, how do you interact with clients? How do you interact with your teams? And all the way to how are you actually now counseling CEOs and pushing ambitions and giving tough feedback. This whole RQ, EQ piece around leading others, leading yourself, building relationships, reading the room. That's another piece of it. And then the third one is I touched on it a bit. I'll call it character for now, but it is this whole thing around resilience. I mean, you have a choice every day on how you want to show up. You have a choice on how you impact.
Totally.
Love that.
And how are we building that in our learning? From the moment you get there around how do you choose to lead? How do you choose to deal with adversity? How do you choose to, when our incentives aren't perfectly aligned with what we're asking you to do, which is the right thing to live our values or to have client impact or the things, how do you push against your incentives that, may actually hurt you to do the right thing, especially when no one's looking. And so how are we building that, which is harder, right? Because this is more around awareness. I'm not going to build your character, but I'm going to put you in situations to what Blair said is, I'll make sure that you realize you're never alone. When you get a bad review, you're not alone. There are many people that are leading our firm and leading the committees that evaluate that we're all in a bad spot at one point on a
At some
review.
point.
And they'll talk about it, but we don't talk about it enough. And so that's the kind of stuff that we're working on. So I have that dimension from a skill building standpoint. And then the other dimension of our learning is, and I'll go to the Kitzbühel point that you guys talked about earlier. Learning is a moment in our firm that's really around building the fabric of our firm. When you go through your first week of the firm and learning, you're going to be a small cohort. And I have found people that continue to kind of come back together in years going forward of that cohort that came together. You go to Kitzbühel for your first training at the 1 year mark, or even at a partner learning, which you guys are going to go to, which I'm faculty on. Usually I'm not going this one. I'm a little jealous that you guys are going.
We're gonna assume that wasn't on purpose, Scott. That you skipped this one.
I can't go to all the training. I was
we won't feel offended.
That's right.
I know. But again, it's like that is the fabric of the firm. Going to a place like Kitzbühel in a hotel that we've been using that is wired for McKinsey, that is only McKinsey. I took my family there at one point.
Yeah.
In the summer, my son looked at me and he goes, "This feels like it's our living room." And it's a big hotel, like 100 rooms and like a thing, but it feels really like firm. The stuff on the walls, how you think about it. So the other piece around learning is, am I creating magic in our learning programs that builds the fabric? I bring the senior leaders to the learning session so they can talk about what's happening in the firm. So you feel a part of a global partnership, not just a local partnership. And so learning is a chance for you to really step back and also feel like I have a bigger and broader network. The learning programs we do, we break people up, and it's a small group as it is big group. And so with all of those things, I have to not only build skills, but I have to build the fabric of the firm when I think about the programs we do.
For people who are wondering, what are they talking about? Kitzbühel, because I just dropped the link in the chat just to show you. It's a website you can actually look at, but it is a truly magical place.
And I love your point on the fabric, Scott. I think, in fact, thinking back to, I went to Kitzbühel at my 1.5 year mark, almost 2. One of the women in my cohort is one of Marie and I. She's on our global TA leadership team, so we've now worked together for 20 years. And one of my faculty members was actually Brian Rolfus, who was the predecessor, the partner in the role before Marie and I assumed this too. So it is so true that these flagship trainings are not just about the amazing content that you learn. They are about these friendships that you build that span over years and years. And frankly, as people come in and out of the firm. So I agree that's such an important part of our learning as well. You mentioned, Scott, we tend to have folks who are joining earlier in their career. So lots of people have on their mind, what is it like when I come in the door? Let's say I'm a new business analyst or a new associate, a new expert. What does training actually look like for me? You mentioned onboarding, but maybe you can give a little flavor of how we think about sort of early tenure training, and then extra bonus points if you can remember, dig up a memory from a special favorite moment from when you were new at the firm and went to one of our flagship training events.
What we try to do, and this is interesting, it's counter to what I did in the military. So in the military, when I joined as an officer, I went through, I guess it was like 16 weeks of officer basic training. And then I went to 3 weeks of scout platoon leader training. Then I went to 3 weeks of the dismounted scout course. And then I went to 70 days of ranger school. And then I finally showed up at my unit almost a year later to be a platoon leader. And so all of that training, to be ready to now lead is focused on that. At McKinsey, you basically get a week.
Yeah.
and so it's very jarring, right? So you come in and we say, look, we have a week. Now we have a second week that I'll talk about in a second, but the first week is for everybody. And that first week is we are going to simulate, what it's like to be on the team. And you're going to have all these experiences in that simulation, which is, how do I interview clients? How do I do problem solving? So we have all of the stuff where you work with your small team like you would in a team environment. We also infuse in there our values. We also infuse in there training around, how we work. How do you leverage the best of the firm? So that whole week is just basically the foundation of how to be successful at our firm. There's then a second week that we call business essentials, and most people go through that too. And it is to make sure that we've upped your game on just your basic business acumen, whether it be financials, whether it be tools, different things like that. We've put in a lot of good simulation work, things like that. So it gets you some harder skills, for you to have when it comes to modeling and things like that. So you're ready for your first study. But that's the 2 weeks. Now, what we have after that, and I'm not going to show you the page, but oh my gosh, the amount of learning opportunities that you can tap into, whether it be, on a Friday afternoon for a webinar or additional center. We used to have a bolt-on of about a day and a half of just AI that we've now embedding into the first 2 weeks. And so, and AI is changing the way that we're doing problem solving. So not only is the whole course of the first week or two now being adjusted with the use of the AI tools that we've built, as well as our expectations, but then having kind of that deeper dive acumen around how to speak AI, how to use AI, et cetera. So all of that's in there as well. So we're continuing to revamp it too, because then you're going to jump into right out of that, your first study. And the expectation of being in that first study is, I know you've only got 2 weeks of training. I know you may have anything from a PhD if you're an associate to an MBA, or if you're a BA, you have an undergrad degree of engineering to everything to political science. So what do I expect of you in that first study? And in that first study, back to learning, it's the apprenticeship model. We'll teach you how to give feedback, and we'll teach you how to take feedback.
Yeah.
This is where, again, about the military, what they bring to the table. I think about athletes and what they bring to the table. Athletes, every day when you're working out, you're getting coached. You're getting coached and told you're not doing this right, you're not doing that right. You can do this better, you could do that better. You're getting some positive reinforcement, and you're getting a lot of coaching. So our athletes are kind of used to it. If you haven't got used to that, the next thing you know, every day your engagement manager is giving you coaching. And so the other associates, and so is the partners. And, you've got to, back to resilience, you've got to be able to accept it for what it's worth. It's not evaluative, it's apprenticeship. And if you take it as evaluative, you're not going to make it here. If you take it as an apprenticeship, you're going to thrive. And so this ecosystem that we have of really quick formal learning that gets you grounded to then being put into a team that is orchestrated around a team effort that leverages the best of the firm to solve a problem with a work stream that you get that is commensurate of where you are in the firm based on your tenure and your background, you will then start that steep trajectory that I talked about. And by their third or fourth study, you're going to be thinking differently. You're going to be attacking problems differently. You're going to be addressing things. You're going to be getting ahead of the problem. It happens really fast. And so that's when you think about those first weeks in the onboarding piece. And I think to your other question, we'll go so far as to teach you stuff that we know may happen. And I'll tell you my story, which is not embarrassing, but it was hard. One of the things you do in the interviews is that we simulate all these different types of interviews that you could have with clients or interacting with clients. And as you're brand new to the firm, and maybe brand new like I was to the business world, and you walk into that first meeting with that first client, one of the things they'll ask you is, how long have you been at McKinsey? What's your background? So we'll prepare you in training for that question. And then good, my answer to that question is very different than Blair's. This is very different. We all have different backgrounds. But the thing that is hard, and you have to own it, is you have a client that is paying a lot of money and expecting a lot of impact from this group. And they're looking at you as the interface to them in this setting, in this first meeting. And when you tell them this is your very first study, and you're from the military, and you went to the University of Kansas, and this is you've got a week and a half or so of training, but you're here to solve their problem.
Like I'm ready.
So
Yeah, we're
when
laughing, but that is a
No,
real
it's exactly
scenario,
right.
right? I
That's
mean,
so
exactly right.
so my story is, yes, we trained on it. Yes, we all talked about it. And sure enough, in my very first study, in my
Of
very
course.
first the COO of that company, who was a former partner at one of our competitors,
Mm.
looks straight at me and says, "How long have you been at McKinsey? What's your background?" So again, it's like, thank God I had the training. I
Yep.
had what answer I was going to give, and then you kind of pushed it from there. So we know how this whole thing works, and
Yep.
we are here to set people up for success. We don't have quotas. We don't have percentages. If our firm can grow by everyone being successful, everyone staying at the firm, and everyone becoming a partner, good on us.
Great.
But a lot
Yep.
of people will be the opposite of me. They'll do their 2 years and say, "Hey, I am actually built to operate something," and they'll leave.
Yep.
Other people will say, "You know what? I like McKinsey, but this kind of work doesn't fit to my strengths or my passions." Or, I don't find the balance. And there's a lot of reasons people leave. And, it's one of those where that early training kind of builds off of that to bring it in there so you're more prepared. So we set you up for as best success we can.
Leave or
Love it.
pivot within McKinsey. I have to say, well,
Yeah.
the reason why
That's
I
right.
pivoted into an internal operating role is precisely what you described, Scott, that in a training, I had the revelation that I'm just much more of an executor and operator than an advisor. And that was the first seed that was planted in my head. So when an internal role came around, that just felt like a good fit, which was another takeaway from a training I had, that I was making decisions too much in my head and not enough in my gut. And so
Yep.
when something came around where the gut said yes, I just jumped on it, and it's history, right? I've stayed in that role, or I've stayed on the internal operating path for the longer time of my McKinsey career. But I really love
Very
what you said
similar.
around feedback, Scott, and then I think that's a really important point to underscore because, as you said, McKinsey is all about feedback. And I remember that also very vividly when I joined as a business analyst many years ago that, wow, it's tough when you get feedback all the time, but how you approach it and how you view it. I took note how you said it exactly. I will repeat that because I think that is spot
Yes.
on, that you view it not as evaluative, but as an opportunity for you to grow and learn, and as a gift, frankly. If somebody has taken the time and the effort to sit you down and try to coach you versus to evaluate you, I think that's a spot
I have
on.
that a lot.
Yes.
As a senior partner, people tell me I'm scary. So I try to figure out how not to
You
be
are very
scary.
scary.
No, but
Hopefully this also debunks that myth, Scott, right?
Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
exactly.
we're all about
it's very,
debunking myths here. Scott Rutherford is not scary, people.
it's
Yeah.
very sobering. When I ran the office, people are like, "Oh, you got to take your tie off. It's just too intimidating." I'm like, "Come on, back to a client work." So, but in all seriousness, when I give somebody feedback, I find now the change in their body posture of when I say, "Look, I'm going to give you feedback. This is in the spirit of apprenticeship, not evaluation." You just see them relax.
Yeah.
Then I say,
Yes.
"Okay, here's what I want you to go do. Here's the things that I saw. You got to be much better at this." All of a sudden, the way they hear it is very
Maybe
different.
we need to
So true.
rebrand it, Scott. Maybe we don't call it feedback anymore, but coaching, like you said, right? Because it's to make you better. Maybe it needs a rebrand. I don't know.
I don't know. But it is really important, and you also have to recognize that not all feedback is right. I mean, I remember as an
Correct.
associate, I got
Oh,
feedback
yes.
EM, and I'm like, "Wow, I don't agree with that."
Yep.
So what I also tell people is like, look, I'm going to give you feedback. It's a snapshot. It's not the movie. But if you get like 4 or 5 of these from other people, then you need to
You might
start,
want to listen to it.
and you may want to start listening after two. But
Yeah.
take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
It may be fair or unfair, but I think it's important, and I think that's where I also tell people don't over-index on
Yes.
feedback.
That's
Take
true.
it, catalog it, work on it, but
Yep.
don't let it crumple you. Don't let it
There's
I
a
love
funny
that.
story, Scott. One of our very first episodes was actually on feedback and apprenticeship with Nora Gardner, who's also a senior partner
Mhm.
in the DC
Yeah.
office, who shared that she got the feedback that she was too short, that she just needs to make herself a little taller, which she gladly ignored.
Yes, she said that was a gift that I took as a box and moved to the side. But I
Okay.
do,
I,
I
I
do
know
love,
Nora very well. She is
yeah, I
she's
know
somebody I
she's
would
she's
know.
wonderful. She's not scary either, so that's the good
No, she's
news.
No.
No, but I love this push on both building the muscle to give feedback effectively in a way that people will hear it, but also to really build the muscle to receive it, to be open to it,
Yes.
to see it as a moment to grow, but not a reason to over pivot. It's funny, Marie, you mentioned in your early training the sort of operator light bulb. At my 1.5 year training in Kitzbühel, I was with an all European group and we were giving each other feedback on our leadership style. And I got the feedback that I was way too American and way too friendly. And that they said very directly to me, and Scott, they did not, I think, this is in the spirit of coaching. It was very direct. You know, clients won't take you seriously. Clients won't take you seriously. You will not be an effective EM. People think you're too nice, you're too friendly. And I remember it really stung. I remember going back to my room and kind of trying not to cry because I thought, well, this is how I'm wired. This is who I am. Over time, I absorbed the pieces of that feedback that were excellent, which is, hey, as a leader and as a people influencer, you have to modulate your style depending on your audience.
Yeah.
But then I also sort of recommitted to say, this is actually how I'm wired. I will always use humor and vulnerability and familiarity as part of my superpower in connecting with people. And I have to modulate that. But that doesn't mean I have to walk in the door, be a consultant, and put that away. So I love this concept that feedback is sort of a living and breathing thing that you get to sit with, think about. And I love just your push to say use it as a catalyst for growth, which I think is what it's all about.
Yeah.
But Blair, what you just said too, though, is really important because you had the maturity to be able to take it, piece it apart, and then use the
Yes.
there. And when
I
I
don't know if
talked
that was my immediate reaction was maybe not so mature. If
I
I'm
know.
totally honest, I was pretty
It's
pissed.
15 years of reflection on it.
Exactly, but
again,
I walked away. But yes,
we
I
all
had to
get
really
triggered.
work at
We all
that.
get
I
triggered.
did.
But when I go to my third dimension I talked about in skills, this is the kind of stuff I'm talking about. When you get feedback that's really harsh, or you get knocked down, maybe rightfully so, do you have the maturity, perspective, character, whatever it is, to do what you did, which is, okay, let me think about that. Do I let it change me, or how do I use it? And the more we can get people to pivot to use it like you did, that's the way. Because otherwise, if people use it the wrong way, it creates more insecurity. It
Yes.
creates them to hesitate. It
Yes.
creates
Yeah.
all sorts of things we don't want.
So
And
true.
the fact that you pivoted it towards advantage, even though not all of it was right, nor was it presented to you right.
Yeah.
I think and that's what we're trying to like pull that apart, and it's not easy. It's very personal. So well
Yes.
done. I mean, just really as a joke. I mean, it's not a joke, but it's a funny thing that I enjoy when I evaluate on one of the committees I'm on at Lex Senior Partners. I'll do something in Europe, and I'll hear from colleagues. Well, Scott, that person's so German. Oh, that person.
I'm German, so I'm not quite sure
No.
what you mean with that.
Right? Then I hear, oh no, Scott, they're Finnish, right? Oh,
Right.
they're so Dutch. Scott,
Yeah.
they are so Italian.
Totally.
And every time I just start laughing, and I'm like, tell me more. What
Hey,
so
what's
this like
behind
you're so
that?
American. I love it. It's like a global firm. It's kind of like let's enjoy that. What do you mean?
Yes, exactly. That is part of the magic. That is part of the magic. Well, I
Scott,
love.
you already.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Marie.
No, I was gonna. You talked already about a few learning priorities that are important right now and important over the next few years. You talked about resilience. You talked about AI skills, how to use it and how to speak about it. Are there other top learning priorities that are on your mind right now? And when we do have new priorities like AI, right, which is an emerging one that is gaining speed very quickly, how do we pivot and deal with that quickly? Because we are a large firm. So how do we train up a large amount of people on topics that pop up in an industry and an environment that is ever changing?
Well, and do it in a partnership where we don't tell people what to do.
Yeah,
Right.
So
exactly.
Oh,
so
there's
this
that.
That
Oh,
as
there's
a
also
kicker.
that.
so I'll do the AI thing first, then we'll go back to on the AI side. It is the acceleration that we need to have on AI acumen is the expectation so high that what you guys are feeling, but I'll share it with the broader group. So I'd say, when it really came to head, earlier this year, so we're kind of a year in, right? With our own tools that we have, Lily and things like that, and leveraging tools that we use from the outside. It is, how do you build the acumen, and what's the expectation? to not only be able to speak AI to your clients, but to use AI for your own individual productivity, but to use our tools to help us with our own problem solving. And so when you
Yep.
start to look at all of that, it started to be like, hey, well, what do we teach? What's the bar? Where's the
Yep.
expectation? How do we incorporate, view? And as the head of learning, while I have folks in learning that know, how to make distinctive programs through design of adult learning techniques, how to deliver those things, how to
Yep.
get the faculty, all those things, we still have to partner with our subject matter experts in Quantum Black or in Digital Rewire to say,
Yep.
okay, well, what are we prioritizing in learning? So what we have now, is for both our new hires and our managers and our partners and senior partners as these priority areas. What is the expectation on speak AI, learn AI, use AI, et cetera, at a very tactical level that then guides us with what we're actually incorporating into formal learning, what we're putting into additional learning opportunities, but again, not mandatory. And then how do we incorporate stuff for people of different, starting points and also, to be honest, different ages. So
Mm-hmm.
for like a senior partner, I signed up for and asked for individual training. And I had a senior BA out of New York do a webinar with me or Zoom. And she
Mm-hmm.
sat down with me and for an hour and a half. And we went from prompting to meta prompting to creating an agent to using Notebook LM in a way that was so actionable. And I knew that because I teach learning now, I knew that if I didn't start applying it every day, it would atrophy.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
have to say, one of the agents that we created that we built off some other stuff was basically the ability to take one of my documents or a client document and have through this agent a CEO lens, a CFO lens, strategy lens, all these
Cool.
rules, all these things. And so I had a client handed me a 14-page kind of memo and said, what do you think? And I said, before I started, I was like, I'll upload it into this agent. I'll have the agent give me their review. It shredded it. And it was something and I didn't agree with all of it, but my gosh, it was so thoughtful and thorough. It gave me a basis to then to do meta prompting off of it. It gave me a basis for me to start to play with it. And then I started to use stuff that I've known since I was client for 10 years, how to reshape it, change the tone, added a bunch of other stuff to it, came back then with a much sharper kind of reaction. And I did that with the amount of time I spent on it relative to what I used to do or even asking a BA or associate to help me with it was unbelievable. So when we think about even as a senior partner, how am I using it and what training is necessary to get me there versus a manager versus a partner who's eating work and asking the right questions of the team and the team to be able to do it. I mean, it's across the board. So what you're seeing with our firm right now is how are we leveraging it for ourselves to give our clients answers faster,
Yep.
potentially more robust, but it's not, hey, I threw it through a bunch of AI and here's an answer. They could do that themselves. There's so much more work we need to do on it to make it acceptable, to make it pragmatic, to make sure the quality is.
Add context, probably.
But let me tell you, the leapfrog that gave me, I was able to do so much more on my own, and I was able to do it so much faster, and it was so much better than without it. So as we're doing that, at that point, that's one piece. The other piece is how we're serving our clients on it.
Mm-hmm.
And helping them become AI natives and becoming more digital. And so there's not only, how we're building that view and have been for years, but then how do we upskill our people to be able to do those types of projects too? So there's not only, your own ability to do it, but it's your ability to actually serve clients on that topic. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're doing right now that is impacting our formal learning programs, what I call our cell-based and expertise learning programs. And
Yep.
also we're looking at, and we'll get there, I think, sooner than we thought, personalized coaching. You should have your own agents that are
Yes.
doing your personalized learning because how you learn and what you need to learn is different than me.
I love
And
that.
I'd argue that there might be a world where we're going to really rethink how we do all of our learning and not have these stair step journeys, but it's going to be very personalized. And my role may become much more of that second piece I talked about, which is the fabric of the firm,
Fabric
and
and
less
culture.
about the
Yes.
skills of the firm, because the agents are going to do that for us. So as we're thinking about where we're headed, how fast we're headed on this, again, as you come to our firm, the trajectory of your learning is going to be super steep in the context, because we have to move so much faster than our clients move. You're going to feel it more with us than you will going to another company, because we have to be ahead of them. Otherwise, we're obsolete. So AI is a big deal. So when I think about where we are pushing as a thematic area number one, it's around AI. Thematic area number two, it's the counter AI. It is, are we building relationships? Are we counseling our clients? Do you have the emotional intelligence? And most importantly, do you have judgment? Because AI does not have judgment. It has a bunch of facts, but what is it building off of? It's building off of historicals. It can try to think creatively. It'll get better and better, but the judgment of what you bring to your client, the judgment of what you pull out of that, how you then triangulate that with other things outside of AI, with people that have muddy boots, with people that are experts that can walk the halls, there's so much more on judgment. So as we think about that second area for us, and I talk about the EQ, RQ piece, it's in there. And then the last one for me too is it gets back to this character piece.
Yeah.
Now, in a world where we need not only good judgment, we need people to do the right thing. And if the right thing is, how you're using AI, how you're actually showing up to the clients, how you think about our clients as actually more important than our firm, and how do you think about your firm more important than your own personal success? We have folks that are very self-oriented, and guess what? They're not successful here. We're not built around that. And if they slip through, they slip through. Everybody has their bad apples. But at the end of the day, the people that are really, really successful in our firm are people that care. You care about your clients, and you care about other people. You care about them. You're going to be thinking about the problem. You're going to be thinking about them. You're going to be thinking about their success, both of your teams as well as the clients. And the second thing is being intellectually curious. If you actually like the work we do, and you're like, oh my God,
you're in a good spot.
I mean, well, seriously, right? Because if you really care about them and our client base, and you really care about our other folks, and you're intellectually curious about who they are as people, who they are as an institution, how the hell do we solve a problem that they can't solve? And you kind of get some energy and enjoyment out of that. This is the place to be. And if I go back to why did I stay as an operator, it's because I do care a lot about my clients, and I care about their institutions, and I care a ton about our firm and our people. And I think, and you can see through the mapping of all the stuff I've done, I don't know if I have ADHD or what, but I'm always learning. I'm very curious. I like to meet people. I like to see how we solve problems. I like to noodle on things. I was with a client late last night, going back and forth on something he's going to bring to the CEO. And I got up this morning and I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't think about that. And so I got up this morning and I wrote him, a pretty short email, but tried to be really succinct and simple on a new concept that I thought was really important, because it's churning.
It sticks with you. Yep.
So those are just some thoughts. I mean, everyone's built a little bit differently, but as I think about my journey and kind of where I am on what we're prioritizing, those are the three big things, and more to come.
Scott, I love, and it's hyper relevant for many people who are joining us today. We tend to have folks joining who are going to be interviewing with us, and so that's, we spend a lot of time answering questions about our process. And what I love about what you just outlined is that is actually I would call it irreducible core of our interviews. Is we want to understand your intellectual curiosity. How do you think about the messiness of a problem? Do you love peeling back the layers and creatively thinking about new ways you can look at something? And then we also want people who care about other people, who recognize that the human element of solving problems is actually the X factor. That's where the leaps and bounds are made. It's not just the conceptual back and forth. It's not, and frankly, it's why I think we are pretty confident that AI is not going to take away client counseling. AI is going to enhance client counseling and put a premium on that counseling, because it's the human element where you push and pull and think about new ideas and disagree with each other and trust each other to really pull things apart and build them back together. So that really is what we try and simulate in our interviews. So I just love what you said, and I want to underscore that. I think people get way too focused on I have to crack the case or I have to tell the perfect story. No, this is actually about understanding your intellectual curiosity and your caring, which I love.
And
I
adding to
agree.
it to enjoy it, right? Because
Yes,
that's what you do in the team room in the day to day. If you really
exactly.
are scared of the cases and you know you can't wait to get out of that situation, well, again, then maybe this is not the place because you encounter that in the team room every single day when you just bounce around a problem. And like you said, Scott, when you're trying to solve things that are so
Yep.
difficult to solve, that our clients need some extra help.
So we have a new hire that I talked to, and when he was preparing for the interviews, he asked me, he goes, "Is this really what you guys do?" And I'm like, "Yeah, this is really what we do.
Actually,
This
what we
the
do.
cases are kind of really what we do." And like, "That's so cool. I had no idea." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Yeah." And then when I talked to the person after they interviewed, they're like, "Yeah, I don't think I did really well in this case." And I talked to the person that interviewed, and they're like, "Oh, he crushed it." And that's because it wasn't necessarily about getting to the answer. To Blair's point, it was
Yes.
the enthusiasm of diving into it. It was the intellectual curiosity. It was the rigor and the logic and how you kind of attacked it. But that's what we're looking for, and
Yes.
it's a very unnatural act to think out loud, but
Yes.
that's what we're asking.
Yes.
Show me what is in your head,
That's right.
Mm.
how you're attacking this problem.
That's
And I'm
right.
going to throw curveballs at you, and I'm going to
Yep.
see how you react, and I'm going to see if you get caught here or there, and just see if you're either enjoying it, you're curious about it, and
Yep.
how do you think, and are you using some rote, structure, or are you listening to me, and we're debating assumptions. And even in the other stuff that we talk about, I go much deeper into who you are, and you can see how authentic these things really are
Yes.
about failure modes, around success modes, about challenges versus it is something they've prepared for. So yes, you need
Mm.
to prepare. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. You need to prepare a lot for these cases. And also the interview, but at the same time, how do you just do what I said in the military? Once you cross the line of departure, all that's just helpful to you.
That's right.
It's
That's
not
right.
what you go with. The plan is not going to work that way. You're not going to get the case that you
Yeah.
prepared for. You're not going to get asked the questions exactly, nor do we want you to answer the questions exactly the way they're cited. We want you to
Exactly.
bring the whole person to the interview so we can see that in an authentic way. And then, unfortunately for us, it's highly subjective. And it's there's people that don't get in that I think should get in. And there's people that get in that maybe they shouldn't have. And we're getting better at that. But when you see, whether it be in business school, you apply to 5 business schools, you get into one, you'll get the other 4. You're like, how did that happen? How did I get in that school? I didn't get in those schools. Like, how did you get into our competitors and you didn't get to us? Or for me, how did McKinsey's competitors all tell me no and McKinsey told me yes? So again,
Yep. I feel like we've already bled into our snack for the road, but I know we're coming up
Yes.
at time. I think you guys we've gotten a couple gold nuggets of advice already that we didn't particularly if you're preparing for interviews. But Scott, one piece of advice for folks as they think about their own learning journeys. What advice would you like to leave folks with?
I think there's a humility because whether it be, and I was with a partner who I think is one of the deepest in AI, and she said to me, she goes, I was talking to one of our new hires, and we were talking about some part of AI, and she walked away and she goes, I learned so much from that interaction.
Mm.
Yeah, so the humility of, even when you think you know everything, be highly observant. I mean, we talk about
I love
strengths
that. I
based
love that.
kind of learning as well. Yeah, when you think you're really good at client counseling and you see somebody else doing it, you're kind of like, wow, I can learn from that. Yeah, so if you always have that mindset, even in your strengths or even in the areas that you need to work on, how you learn,
I
if
love
it
that.
comes from a place of humility, you will learn from people a lot younger than you. You'll learn
Yeah.
from places that you don't expect to learn it from. If you're really observant versus just focused on what you're going to say, you're going so that would be my thing. If you come at, continuous learning with a level of humility, it opens up a lot of doors.
I love that. I think that's a perfect snack.
Perfect snack. That's right. That's right.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you
No,
so
thank
much.
you guys. This is great.
Yeah,
I
for
appreciate
sharing
the
your
opportunity.
insights and experience. It's been absolutely wonderful.
We
Awesome.
are so appreciative. Again, you mentioned earlier, we're all in the sprint toward year end. So we know this is an hour you don't technically have to
I
give. So
know.
we are super grateful that you spent it with us. So
All
thank you.
good.
Thank
All
you.
right.
And to our
Take care.
listeners, see you again in the new year.
See you
That's
in the new year.
right.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye,
Bye.
everybody.